Now, learn the bass catching techniques of the Bassmaster Tournament Trail Pros. Coming next on the Bassmasters, right here on TNN Outdoors. If you could go bass fishing anywhere in the world, where's your best bet? Well, here's a clue. Today, the Bassmaster Tournament Trail heads to Northeast Georgia and Richard B. Russell Reservoir for the Kmart Georgia Top 100. This 26,600-acre Corps of Engineers impoundment on the Savannah River is getting a reputation as a fish factory. Sandwiched between the larger and better-known Hartwell and Clarks Hill lakes, the little brother, Richard B. Russell, has matured as a bass fishery, perhaps the best in the Southeast.
But timing can be everything. What a difference a season makes. Mother Nature can play some dirty tricks, such as the last time the pros were here in late fall. Sub-freezing temperatures, nasty weather, and tight-lipped bass.
And I'd never been here before, but after I'd left here in November, I didn't think there's any fish in this lake. If you got 1 or 2 bites a day, you're really doing something. And all the local people told us, said, boy, y'all ought to come here in the spring. This thing is full of bass. They're right.
The key word, spring. The magic time when the bass leave their deep water winter homes and crowd into the shallow water pockets. Be here in April. As the local Deep South Bassmasters predict, when the dogwood's in bloom, the bass are on the banks.
It's springtime. Bass are in various stages. Pre-spawn, fish on the beds, and post-spawn bass moving toward deep water areas. Figuring out where and when is the key to success. And fortunately, a wide variety of lures produce strikes.
I'm fishing an area of the lake where the water is a little bit cooler. It's about 58 degrees. And that's a real key to my pattern right now because I'm catching the fish that aren't really interested in spawning. They're just starting to move up and starting to get shallow and get real active shallow. I'm using real basic techniques to catch them. I'm flipping and I'm using a spinner bait, both up on the bank. I'm flipping something a little unique. It's been out in Bassmasters. It's a hot lure right now. What I'm flipping is a tube bait. It's larger than a normal size tube bait that most people are familiar with. It's about 4 inches long. It's about a ½ inch in diameter. It's a little bit harder plastic than most tube baits are, and that's what I'm using to catch my fish.
A lot of those fish are I feel like they're spawning or trying to bed, and they were ticking the bait and hitting at it, and I'd hook them on the trailer hook and they'd jump off, so I changed. I made a change and went to a bigger blade, bigger bait.
The fish are basically doing 3 different things. A lot of the guys, as you're seeing, are running to the backs of pockets, and they're fishing for the fish that are actually in the spawning process, and some of them are still guarding fry back there that are just finishing up, and there's probably some fish moving up to spawn right now with the full moon coming in. But the fish I've basically been keying on today and the last 2 days have been the post-spawn fish that have pulled out.
So which pattern do you favor? Catch them pre-spawn? Catch them off the beds, or go for the post-spawn fish? Stay tuned to find out the winning pattern. I'm Bob Cobb. The Bassmasters will be right back from the granite capital of the world, Elberton, Georgia, with the Kmart Georgia Top 100 tournament.
Richard B. Russell State Park, launch point for the $316,000 Kmart Bassmaster Georgia Top 100. The best pros on the BASS Tournament Trail paired with amateur partners. The winner nets $75,000 in cash and awards, including a fully rigged Ranger bass boat. The fishing conditions? Perfect. Until last night. The lake level is rising following heavy downpours. Red clay mud rolling into the backwater spawning areas. Visibility will be difficult for sight fishermen. Once again, Mother Nature turns nasty.
A favorite springtime lure on Lake Russell is a trick worm. It's also called a floating worm. Rigged Texas style with a weedless hook and a swivel, tied a foot or so ahead. The lure is twitched and slowly sinks. The action is the trigger. Nothing in nature resembles the bright yellow are glow orange colors. But bass strike it, as Georgia pro Cliff Kraft shows us here with this acrobatic 4-pound largemouth.
The rising lake level, coming up more than a foot overnight, presents a problem, as Mark Davis explains.
A lot of these fish, the bigger fish, they're established in their little bedding areas right now. And now that the lake has come up, there may be new fish move up with that water, but I feel like the big fish that are already established in these pockets are going to stay put where they're at. So that means I'm going to have to slow my worm down, let it go even deeper.
Mark's changing up between a spinnerbait and the floating worm. A heavier leader line is a key to the worm rig.
I'm fishing on a 10-pound super silver thread line, rigged on a spinning rod, a medium heavy spinning rod, and I've got I use a heavy line and I make a little leader out of a heavy line, about 15-pound test or 14-pound test. With 10-pound test, if you hook a big fish, like a 5-6-pound fish, and he has the worm down deep in his throat or way down in his mouth, I like that little piece of, right there, maybe you could see it, of that heavier line for that leader. And I've had a lot of big fish in the past saw me off by fighting. And they'll saw that 10-pound test line in two. But with that little bit of leader down there, it's a little insurance. On that fish is exactly what we were talking about. The lake's coming up, and that fish was in this little indention right there, a little bedding area. And you see how far out off the bank it was when I got the strike. Normally with a floating worm, you know you're catching them up there shallow. I'm having to let the worm go down, and it's a hard way to fish. You got to have a lot of patience to let that worm go down, go down, go down. You don't see the strike. All you do, you feel a little bit of weight, you check it, and then you got him. The good thing about the floating worm and fishing it that way is when a good bass, once he ever picks it up, he's not going to spit it out. And he'll swim with it long enough for you to figure out what's going on, but it's kind of tricky. And I probably caught that fish 7 foot deep.
We'll have more tips and tactics for springtime bassin' coming up. But right now, it's time for Bass Mail, where you ask the pros questions. Robert Jones of Peoria, Illinois writes, high muddy water is a problem with fishing the river in the spring. What's a good lure for such conditions? Here's Bassmaster Superstars champion O.T. Fears with his suggestion.
Okay, this is a spinner bait that I used to win the Superstars tournament. The reason that I was using this particular bait on the Illinois River was that the water was extremely dirty. I used both of these. One was when I was fishing. This is a little heavier, half-ounce head on this particular bait. And if you'll notice that it has a chartreuse yellow and white skirt, very visible in dirty water. Another thing that increases the visibility is the red fluorescent blade or kicker blade that I use on the front of the main blade. The reason that I use this combination is that over several years I've discovered that the bait actually shows up better to fish in dirty water. The other thing that I had in my favor was that I was using a prototype blade that I've developed for bulldog lures. This blade has an extreme amount of vibration to it, so that in dirty water, the fish have a tendency to locate this bait better, faster, and they strike it with great intensity.
If you have a question for the Bassmaster pros, write BASS Mail, 8600 Coppertown Lane, Box 101, Dallas, Texas, 75243. We may answer your question on the air.